This is the emblem of the American Revolution Bicentennial. It represents the 1976 festival in honor of America's 200th birthday. As a salute to this historic occasion, the North Dakota American Revolution Bicentennial Commission has taken steps in support of programs which contribute to the preservation of many interesting items that will be a legacy to tomorrow's citizens. The value of preserving our heritage is being recognized by more and more Americans. One indication is the articles they collect. If this old fire department kerosene lantern could talk, it would probably tell some exciting tales. But unfortunately, it can't do it. On the other hand, this old-time still camera and this early-day movie camera actually left a pictorial history of the days when they were used. The same holds true for the phonograph. The sounds of yesterday are recorded forever on records. All these things give us an insight into the life and times of our grandparents. This little item, for example, was once found in almost every living room. It's called a stereopticon. By inserting these twin pictures and peering through the eyepiece, the picture can be seen in 3 dimensions. The early-day professional photographers took thousands of scenic views using this system. But as this one, many of the images are gradually fading away. In the same manner, ordinary photos of our early days are also being destroyed. Not maliciously, but by being forgotten. In attics around the country, there are probably many glass plates and snapshot negatives, which if rediscovered, could shed more light on our heritage. For example, here are some photos of the June 7th, 1893 fire that just about destroyed the entire business district of Fargo. Most of the negatives have disappeared, and now all that remains are a few battered copies of the original pictures. On this tape, we have the voice of the late John Hanaher, who as a boy actually witnessed the Fargo fire. Listen now as he tells his story. We'll add a few photos, and you'll relive a moment of early North Dakota history.
That was 1893. Well, it started in a store next to Moody's on Front Street. And the fire then jumped to that building and then jumped across to this grain elevator. The wind was from the southwest. And the fire came on the First National Bank side to NP Avenue, and then it jumped across to the corner there and went down to the fire station. The fire station went with the rest of it. The fire came down at Robert Street North there and took a big wholesale grocery house, Raver's Wholesale Grocery, where the Raver Hotel is now. And took that Columbia Hotel, and it was the first, supposed to be the fireproof hotel. And on Broadway, on the corner, there was a bank, Mears Bank, and that burned. And I took the block where the Powers Hotel is, but everything on Broadway to the track on that fire of 93.
A number of cans of 35mm motion picture film, taken as early as 1915, were discovered in a building near Bismarck. Unfortunately, the pictures were on nitrate film base, a material which deteriorates slowly with the years, ultimately turning to dust. The State Historical Society of North Dakota and the Bicentennial Commission, acting together, made a concerted effort to save what they could of these disintegrating motion pictures. The films were taken by an enterprising Bismarck photographer named Frighjof Holmboe. He operated under the name of the Publicity Film Company, and with partial financing from the State Department of Immigration, he produced a number of short advertising films about North Dakota. These movies were subsequently shown in Eastern theaters with the hope that they would attract people to settle in the state, and particularly the counties that co-sponsored the films. Mr. Holmboe, a Norwegian immigrant, was a rather inventive man, and he usually did his filming on what he called movie day. In order to attract the surrounding farm people, he usually advertised with posters. In the Hebron area, because of the predominantly German-speaking population, he printed the handbills in German. Of course, all the films that Mr. Holmboe made were silent in black and white, and all were photographed at a different camera speed than used today for sound film. So the action appears jerky and speeded up a bit. You'll have to forgive the lack of clarity and the sometimes spotty appearance. But you're about to get a glimpse back into the time when the state of North Dakota was just a little more than 25 years old. This was Wilton, a few miles north of Bismarck on movie day. Lured by the great novelty of the motion picture camera, homesteaders poured into the town, giving it an appearance of a heavily populated city. As the saying goes, everybody wanted to get into the act. And this was only half the fun. Getting to see yourself or your farm on the silver screen could be the greatest thrill of all. Agriculture was Holmboe's photographic specialty. This is called a Big 4 30-horsepower gasoline tractor. Although the horse and the steam tractor were still being used to power most farm implements, gasoline tractors were beginning to be very popular. Steamers like this 1915 case model made easy work of pulling a 12-bottom plow. New farms were popping up everywhere. The typical barnyard contained horses, cattle, and pigs. The farm wagons were drawn by horses, and a good percentage of the grain crop was used just to feed the draft animals. Cream cans in the back of a wagon was a common sight, for every small town had a creamery or a cream station. In the western part of the state, wool and mutton were another mortgage lifter, an important source of farm income. Real cowboys rode the range for Holmboe's hand-cranked camera. The harvest season started when horse-drawn binders cut the wheat and tied the grain into bundles. Neighbors often helped each other harvest their crops, and the threshing season sometimes lasted till snowfall. The wheat bundles were collected in wagons and hauled to the threshing machine. Power for the threshing machine was supplied by either a steam or gasoline engine, and it was transmitted by a long belt from the flywheel. This rig was driven by a 1916 Bates steel mule, an early track-laying tractor. Bundle pitching was a job for men with strong arms and backs. In the threshing rig, the kernels of grain were separated from the straw and chaff. The straw was then blown into huge stacks. Field demonstrations of the latest tractor innovations were held all over the state. In 1917, the year the U.S. entered the First World War, farmers gathered to witness demonstrations of some of the 85 new tractor lines introduced that year. One attention getter was the Ford Motor Company's Fordson tractor. This was the first use of cast iron frame construction, and it featured a 20-horsepower four-cylinder motor. Over 100,000 of these were sold during the next 3 years. These were the years of the Model T, available in any color, as long as it was black. And the roads of the time were not always the shortest distance between 2 points. Single-lane roadways caused very little traffic problems. The thriving little communities like Hazen, North Dakota were more than happy to host the hordes of auto drivers and their families, especially if it was market or movie day. This was the heyday of the small town in North Dakota. The Brown Hotel in Mott, the town known as the White City because all buildings were painted that color, was also painted white. Cameraman Holmboe, in August of 1915, recorded the main street of Hazleton so he could show this scene at the State Agricultural Exposition in Bismarck that fall. The railroad had reached Killdeer about 2 years before these scenes were taken in September 1916. The occasion was Stock Shipping Day. Jamestown was advertised as the City Beautiful, but it had not yet paved its streets. And Fargo was quite a city. Its population of over 21,000 had doubled during the past 10 years. It was known as the biggest little city in the world, with 19 miles of electric car line, 8 newspapers, 30 churches, and 2 vaudeville theaters. It was not necessary for photographer Holmboe to stage a busy street scene in Fargo. One was naturally provided. All over the state, in communities large and small, Mr. Holmboe found busy people more than willing to act for his camera. Newly arrived immigrants to North Dakota hauled supplies to their new homestead by horse-drawn wagons. The magnificent Lemoore Courthouse, like 11 others in the state, had been designed by a St. Paul firm. It made a perfect background for a 1917 fashion parade. While most North Dakota small towns catered exclusively to agriculture, Hebron was an industrial town as well. In 1904, high-quality brick clay was discovered near the town. So this $250,000 brick factory was constructed to produce building materials for the booming Northwest. Many schools, churches, and commercial buildings were constructed from this North Dakota resource. Hebron itself could boast of this $20,000 up-to-date brick high school. These remarkable motion pictures capture the charm and pleasant living of the unhurried days of long ago. Growing up in this fast-growing state was a happy time. This playful romp in a Jamestown park shows clearly that kids are kids when a movie camera is pointed at them. Holmboe was a good director. His moving pictures really moved. Here's a happy throng, dressed in their Sunday best, cavorting in Mandan's Railroad Park, captured for all time in this truly marvelous glimpse of yesterday. In those days, almost everyone turned out for the state or county fair. In Grand Forks, Holmboe's camera recorded a grandstand filled to capacity with auto race fans. Every town had its baseball team, and every town had a brass band. For music was a part of community life. The band performed at just about every gathering or sporting event. This unusual program was photographed at Valley City Normal School. Politicians delivered their speeches in person. No radio or TV in those days. The start of World War I sent a wave of patriotism across the state. And soon, these Bismarck boys were marching off to make the world safe for democracy. Some would not return. In Valley City, hundreds of volunteer firemen from all over the state marched in their 1917 convention parade. Every community had a well-organized firefighting team. At the first sound of the fire bell, fleet-footed firemen rushed to the rescue. Meanwhile, back at the Firemen's Convention, energetic salesmen demonstrate the latest equipment for fighting fires. Cameraman Holmboe was not above adding a few commercial touches to his films. But this time, he had trouble keeping the spectators out of the act. Here comes Valley City's first motorized fire truck. It's brand new. The new fire truck you've just seen was eventually retired after many years of useful service. It wound up rusting in a junkyard, but happily it's been rescued and restored. Whether it's fire engines or old pictures, the heritage of our predecessors will only be preserved for future generations if people care enough to do it now. By shedding more light on our past, perhaps we can see more clearly into the future. That's the heritage theme of the North Dakota American Revolution Bicentennial Commission as we celebrate our country's 200th birthday.